Hello, Brad. It's good to have you on the show today. If you'd just like to really quickly introduce yourself, we'll unpack it as we progress in the show. But just tell the audience who you are, what you're up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Brad Huebner. I been in construction close to 20 years. Have my own construction company for about 12 years, and then the last 4 years I've been doing business coaching for contractors.
Fantastic. I was really pleased to get you on the show. I was really keen to reach out and for you to accept. So thanks so much for being here. Obviously,
Yeah.
you've got a lot of runs on the boards, as you say, working in the field initially, but also coaching people now. So you probably have seen a lot of stories and examples, and our audience will no doubt learn a lot from today's session. So tell us a little bit more about what you build and what you've built in the past, I suppose, but what you're helping your clients with these days.
Yeah, I started my construction business in 2009, right? Whenever in the States we had the housing market crash, I thought the best time to start a business is when everyone's leaving. And there's not much work out there. So it forced me to really get creative and understand marketing, right? And so that helped me. But really, I do coaching now because I made every mistake when I had my own business. I was making pretty much every mistake that I help contractors with now I made. And so that, the first 9 years in business of doing, we started out as a handyman and then we started doing remodeling. So I consider myself a remodeling business, but the first 9 years was just, I was doing okay and I was, slowly growing, but I was always struggling to make real leaps in the business. And then I finally got coaching myself, and that really turned things around for me in my business. And then through that process, the idea of coaching was implanted. And then a few years later, I decided to start doing coaching myself. So now I help other contractors avoid the 9 years worth of mistakes that I made so they don't have to go through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think and I certainly see it all the time, and it's how I even started my own business. You start with a skill. So you work your way through the ranks. You start as a junior, you start as an apprentice or whatever it is for your industry, and work your way up to start your own company. And all you've got is examples of how to run a business is what you've observed, and you've only seen a certain aspect of what it is in a company. So certainly for me, lessons learned the hard way in the early days. I think getting mentors around you and coaches are really beneficial, because we just don't know what we don't know. What are some of the, I guess, the key gaps in people's understanding when they're starting out in a trade related business?
Yeah, there's a couple things. One is that they focus on the craft, right? So let's just say you're a carpenter, finished carpenter. You've done trim and cabinets and houses, and you decide you want to start your own business, and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do carpentry. They put a lot of effort in the product. Like I'm really good at installing cabinets. I'm really good at doing trim. I'm really good at X, whatever that is. And that's all that matters. If, people are going to hire me because I'm good at, this product, the part they miss is that the entire customer service, customer experience side of the business is what really gets you the job sold. And there's a disconnect. There's a lot of guys feel like as long as I do good work, that's all that matters, and they miss out on all the other things. That's one. The second thing, which ultimately is more important, is that they just simply don't charge enough. They're used to being paid as an employee, and so they approach their business with an employee mindset of they're getting paid for the hours that they're working. And so they usually undercharge because of that. So those two things really, from the beginning, set contractors up for failure.
Yeah, I suppose we all make those same mistakes in the early days, and just to charge, we're all thinking per hour because that's how we were paid as an employee.
Yep.
Typically, it might be full-time hours, but your hourly rate, what it all adds up to. So, and there's just so many things that people miss in terms of running a business. There's only so many hours that you can be actually doing the work, but there's half the time you're spending on other aspects of running the business, and that needs to be accounted for and paid for, and so you're running a successful business. How would you go about helping people to figure out a better way to to quote for projects.
So you cut out just a little bit. How did you do what? Can you repeat that for me?
Yeah, how would you help people change their mindset, I suppose, to charge in a different way so they're getting a higher return for the work they're putting in?
Yeah, that's probably one of the hardest things to do in terms of coaching. Nobody wants to think that that their mindset is wrong. Like no one wants to be wrong, right? And so like if I'm basically telling you your mindset's wrong, you need to change it, there's a lot of resistance that goes into that. So the mindset part of it's hard, but the thing that they need to change is how they perceive value. Because again, going back to the hourly rate, if I do X and I work, it takes X amount of hours, then I get paid X per hour. You have to break that model completely down and throw it out the window. It really
Mm,
has nothing to do with how long it takes you and what you feel like you should charge per hour. It's what is the value that the customer gets out of it. And so we call that the perceived value. And that's
mm.
really different for every customer. Some customers that are, and I'm sure you've run across this, and I know the people listening, when you run across a customer who's like, well, I can do all this myself, I just don't have time. You pretty much instantly know they're not going to put much value on what you're doing because they see it as a simple task to them. Versus you could do the exact same job for, say, a 70-year-old woman who lives by herself. She's widowed. She has the money, but she has no idea how to do all this. And she values trusting you, knowing that you're going to do the work. And so we call that the certainty of achievement. She puts more value on making sure it's going to get done and she doesn't get scammed. And because she can't do that, her value is higher. And so the exact same work for two different people is going to change, based on their value.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting point. So the person who thinks they can do it themselves, they're potentially going to be a bunch of headaches. I wonder if sometimes it's just sometimes people thinking about their masculinity and want to believe that they can do the thing themselves, but potentially they can't. They're just talking. I don't know. It's an interesting space to play in. So there's lots of clues, I suppose, that suggest who might be a great customer and who might not be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have sort of a mechanism to filter through those sorts of things so you're getting the great customers and potentially avoiding the headaches?
Well, there's two things. One, are you attracting the right customer, which that's a marketing branding side of the equation. The second side of the equation, or the other side of the equation, is the sales aspect. So being able to determine on on a quick phone call whether or not they're going to be a valuable customer or they're going to waste your time. That is one of the main things that I help contractors do is implement a sales system that helps them to find. We ask certain questions to find out who's a good fit and who isn't a good fit before we ever go out there and visit with them and waste 2 or 3 hours of our time. So that's one of the most significant things that I teach is the sales process and how to do that.
Yeah, brilliant. And so is it about, I suppose it depends on the context of the type of business you're doing and the region you're serving, but would you say getting into a niche is important, or is that, what are your thoughts on niching into a specific type of work?
Yeah, I had one of my clients who came on last year. He niched down, completely rebranded, niched down to just doing bathrooms, and he's done extremely well with it. I am 100% for niching, and I mean like even down to micro niching, not just I'm going to be an electrician, but saying I'm going to only do generator installs and nothing else as an
Mm,
electrician. Like that level of niche is, and I get all kinds of pushback on this, Wes. Everyone's like, no, I can't, there's not enough work and all these different things. But the reality of it is, it's so much easier when you niche down because you only have one thing that you have to focus on. One sales process, one marketing, one set of marketing, one customer type, one process, one set of tools. It's all easy when you do that. And again, I learned the hard way because when we started out doing handyman work, I was doing everything and I had all kinds of tools and it was hard to find people because you got to be able to do 7 different trades. And so it was very, very difficult to do that. So yes, niching down will make your life much, much easier. But for established companies, that's very, very scary to do.
Yeah, well, it's a big advantage a smaller company can have because we're a little bit more nimble and we can make those changes and be in a niche and become excellent at that niche. And I suppose unless you're in a small country town with only a population of a couple of hundred people, well, maybe niching isn't right for you because you really do
Sure.
need to do whatever it takes to get work through in those really small regional communities. But for the most part, we're in larger towns and cities. So niching is a wise choice. There's always balance in all of these things, but certainly for my business, niching has been successful. And of the clients we're working with, all of those that choose to niche, and the other thing too, because they'll typically choose the service offering that's the getting the best results and the happiest client. So everyone's happier. You can charge more. Everything's better because your sales process is consistent. You're doing the same thing all the time. You know precisely what you're doing rather than dabbling in a whole bunch of things and just doing an average job. You can be excellent in one core thing. So really, I think that's valuable, particularly for the trades, because as handy people, as you know, people who are handy with their tools and so on can typically do a whole bunch of stuff, but it's only one or two things that will be the most profitable. Is that the way you see it as well?
For sure. Again, I experienced it in my own business. There were certain, when we were doing handyman stuff, there were certain types of services where we would make lots of money. Our profit margins were very high. And then there were other things where we would barely break even. But I had the mindset of like, well, it's more work, it's work to keep us busy. Busy is a buzzword for a lot of people that don't understand how to be profitable in their business. And so they feel like if they're busy, that equals success. But busyness doesn't equal success. Profitability in your business is what equals success. So yeah, I experienced that myself, trying to do a bunch of different things. And it seemed to backfire in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to a guy about this very thing, and he went through the same process. So he was doing roofing inspections and that kind of stuff. But he found the best work was the cleaning of the mildew and so on the roofing. Whilst it was a lower price of some of the other service offering, it was super easy, and he just could build a simple system so he could hire people who could do it really easy. Whereas the higher end, what was initially perceived to be a better type of client actually wasn't, because it took too much of his effort, where he could build out a team and just make it repeatable and just do the I think mildew moss type washing of roofs, which, yeah, it's really interesting when you dig into your numbers. Do you think people know their numbers well enough to figure out what the most profitable parts of their business are?
I think the overwhelming majority of contractors, specifically ones that are, new, less than a few years in the business, they have no idea how much money they're making on jobs. They literally don't check that. And
Yeah.
I see that every day when I talk with contractors. That's very obvious when I say, "Oh, what's your, excuse me, what's your average gross profit on your jobs?" Oh, well, I'm not really sure. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
how do you know how to price your jobs then? Well, I just this and this, and I, hope I make money. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, you got to know your numbers. You have to know your numbers.
Yeah. And I guess it's really difficult to know those numbers as clearly if you're dabbling in so many things, because it might be a project that's new to you and you're not quite sure what time investment it might be and the materials. You might be able to figure that out, but there might be aspects that you're just not quite across until you roll up the sleeves and get into it. So there's so many potential hazards when you're dabbling in so many things. And we'll move to the trust piece of the show. So built, trust, chosen. What do you think are the biggest things that erode trust in the trades construction industries?
Well, number one is communication. I don't know what it is, but contractors notoriously are terrible at communication, and so I guess I guess a lot of them they operate in kind of general generalities. It's like, oh, I'll be there at 7 o'clock in the morning, but in your mind, it's like sometime around 7. Maybe it's 7:30, maybe it's 8 o'clock, maybe it's 7:15, and so it's a generality. It's best case of hoping that it's going to work out. What the client
Yeah.
hears is you're going to be here at 7, and if you're here at 7:01, you lied to me, right? You already broke
Yeah.
that trust. Now that's kind of after you sell the job, but even if it's going to the estimate, I always made it a point to be like 10 minutes early to an estimate if I was going out there. And if I thought that I was going to end up being 30 seconds late, I would be calling them, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm running just a little bit behind. I may be there a couple minutes late." That's it. A phone call on the way. And usually I get there like right at the right time anyways. It's
Yeah.
communication. It's such an easy thing to do, yet it's one of the most it's the thing that contractors get wrong all the time because they don't, again, we're talking about value earlier. They don't put enough value in the communication side of it and the customer experience side of it. And that's really where the trust is built. It's built there, but it also starts way before. I mean, things like Google reviews. If you have lots of Google reviews, that builds trust. If you have a website, it builds trust. If you have social media platforms where you're posting content, it builds trust. All of these things build trust. And I call it, at least in the sales process, I call it value stacking. So like each one of those things is stacking a little bit of value, but it's also building trust along the way. So you can simply say it's trust building by having all those things. If I have a bunch of reviews, good website, I'm all over social media, lots of content, lots of things, versus the other contractor who has none of those, right? And it is just like the neighbor is like, "Oh yeah, I use this guy." The trust is going to be much easier to build on my end than it is on the other contractor's end. He has to build the trust right after first contact. I've already
Yeah.
built trust before I've even talked to them.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And they somewhat feel as though they know, like, and trust you already if they've seen you all over the place online. If it's a significant investment, people are going to check you out as far and as wide as they can. So
Yes.
they're going to look at your website and your socials and your reviews. Obviously, reviews are so important because they can't be doctored so easily. So people trust them, obviously. All of these things stack up, as you say. That I love it. What did you call it? The value stack.
Yeah, value stacking is like kind of on the
Yeah.
sales process side of it. You're stacking value because if I move to a new city and I don't know anyone and I go to look for Google reviews, it's a legitimate way to vet someone, right?
Yeah.
I search for plumber near me, and there's 15 plumbers that pop up. The one that has 300 reviews is the one that I'm going to look at first, versus
Yeah.
the other guy that's got 20. Right? It doesn't mean I'm
Yeah.
going to hire that person, but that just the single thing of having the reviews, it built trust in my eyes of like, oh, this company's been in business. Obviously, they're going, they're doing good work. They got a 5-star rating. I'm going to reach out to them first, right? So
Yeah.
there's a level of trust built there.
Yeah, 100%. And so the other thing too to consider is when we're selling something that's not an impulse buy, like it might be fine if it was a $20, something that you just buy on the, off the cuff. We're talking about services that are in people's homes. So people are obviously super keen to get that done right, and they're uh, cautious on who they let into their home in the first instance as well. So all these things are super important for the trades construction industry to build that trust. What would you say to be chosen? What does it take to be chosen in the trades construction industry?
Well, I said it earlier that when people are hiring someone, their decision is based on what is the certainty of achievement. Like, how certain am I if I hire you that I'm going to achieve what I want, whether it's a bathroom remodel, kitchen remodel, new roof, landscape, it doesn't matter what it is. How certain am I that you're the right person to do that job? Now, there can be different qualifiers. Like, if all I care about is price, then my qualifier is the cheapest guy out there if I don't care about quality. But if I care
Yeah.
about quality, then price isn't going to be, a consideration. It's not going to be number one. And so now I'm going to be looking at things like Well, how long you been in business? You just started 6 months ago. I don't know. That's kind of sketchy. Like, maybe you do good work, but you don't have a history. So a lot of these things that tie into the certainty of achievement is what's going to get you chosen by your client. And again,
Yeah.
going back to the sales process that I teach is very heavy on communication, like how to be an effective communicator. And that piece alone is going to give you such a head start over everyone else who does the traditional way of contracting, that right there is enough to make you chosen, most of the time whenever you're in front of the right client.
Yeah. 100%. And if you look after the clients you've got, then you've got all that referral work coming through because you've created a great experience through the communication process. It's really true when trades turn up late, people get really frustrated with that. So simply communicating that, you'll be here within this window, but then if you're not going to meet that window, just to let people know. They might need to duck out and do other things during the day. And so they know they can duck out now and come back and not be frustrated that the tradie didn't, we call them tradies here in Australia.
Sure.
The tradie didn't, mess up their entire day. So you're speaking of communication, but also you're mentioning like systems and tools. Is there software pieces that help people put this stuff together?
There's CRMs. I mean, even AI now you can, implement, but there's definitely like CRMs and automations that you can put into place to make it a lot easier for you. But yeah, there's lots of ways you can do, even if it's a manual system, like you have to do it manually, you can still create a system that's easy to follow so that you don't leave things off. And I'll use that as an example to touch back on what we just talked about. If the traditional way, if you're the contractor, Wes, and I call you and I'm like, hey, I want to get an estimate on this. And you're like, yeah, I'll come out there, Thursday at 3 p.m. and give you an estimate. That's kind of the traditional way. Versus if I'm using the value building way and I'm also using automations, I could say, hey, we're going to be out there Thursday at 3 p.m. And then after we get off the phone, you get an email that says, hey, this is the appointment. So now you can, confirm it. Right. And then the day before I come out there, you get another email or text that's reminding you, hey, just wanted to let you know we're still on track for this. Right. And then an hour before I go out there, a text message goes out. Hey, I'm looking forward to meeting you in the next hour. We'll be there soon. Right. And like you can set up all these touch points and this can all be automated. But that's the difference between the guy who says, I'll be there at 3 p.m., shows up at 3:20. And then me who says, I'll be there at 3 p.m. And then you're getting all these touch points, quote, communicating what's going on so that you're not confused or thinking, well, is he going to show up? I mean, he told me last week we scheduled it. I don't know if he's going to come or not. But with me, you're getting notifications the whole way through knowing what's going on. So like, that's a big difference in getting chosen is like, you can use the automations for that. But that is going to build way more value than the guy just says, I'll be there next week. And you're not sure if he's going to show up or not.
Yeah, 100%. And people, whilst the price will always be a factor in making a decision, it's not always necessarily the primary factor. And also it's forgotten after the project. So if you cheap out and do a cheap estimate and do the job cheaply and you create a terrible communication process and you show up late and all this stuff and you let the person down in a whole bunch of ways, they're not going to refer you on to other friends and family and so on. And they've forgotten they got a great price on it. But if you spend a little bit more and you've got the resource to actually invest into the person, well, they're going to refer you and they'll soon forget they paid a little bit more than the cheaper guy. Anyway, how do you help? Because that's a decision at the front end and they don't know the quality of they know to an extent the quality of communication up until that point. How do you build that value so they choose you ahead of the cheaper guy? Because there's always going to be a cheaper guy, isn't there?
Yeah. I always joke that, there was always there's been a cheaper guy since Jesus walked earth, right? Like he's out there doing carpentry stuff and the guy down the road's doing it for cheaper, right? Like it's always been around. It's never going to go away. You really, you can't focus on your competition. You really can't. Matter of fact, I think my podcast episode that dropped today, I even mentioned it, like, I don't focus on competition. I don't care about the competition.
Yeah.
What really separates you is how you communicate. Again, going back to the communication, you've probably met someone, Wes, for the first time, and you had a short conversation with them, and you left that conversation thinking, wow, this guy, is very well spoken, he's very articulate, or he's very smart. I can tell that he knows what he's talking, whatever it is. Like, you've left that conversation like somewhat impressed with that person, right? Versus you've talked to someone who had the opposite effect, where it's like, if I never talk to this guy again, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, right? It's the same thing when you're talking to customers. Once you learn how to use certain ways, use certain questions, we use open-ended questions. We use different tools, labeling and mirroring, to really make the conversation go really smooth, to where by the end of the conversation, it's like two people who, long lost friends from college that are reconnecting 10 years later. That's what the conversation feels like. It doesn't feel like I'm trying to sell you something. It feels like a natural conversation. That's communication, and that can be engineered specifically through the sales process once you understand how to communicate effectively.
Yeah. I could see this would work really well for the founders. Is it easily adaptable or applicable when you're building out a team to do the sales, the front end sales process as well?
And yeah,
absolutely. Does that look slightly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have clients who have, managers, general office managers, or even salespeople that are doing it, for them, or like the first part of it, and then the owner's going out and doing the estimate, kind of tag teaming it. But yeah, it's definitely trainable. Anybody that wants to learn how to sell, and it's going to save you so much time. It's going to save you so much time. You're not doing estimates for people that are never going to hire you, but it's going to make your value proposition so much higher that people are going to realize, man, he's $5,000 more than this other guy, but I really like him. He really understood what we wanted. We had great connection, so I think it's worth that extra 5,000.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on? I know some people suggest you should itemize and have the materials pricing as a separate piece when you're estimating, keeping it all separated so people can see precisely what everything is. And others think it should be all packaged in as a final, final end product price, the total price. What's your thoughts on all of that when you're estimating?
I'm kind of laughing because I have a TikTok video it's somewhat going viral over that exact conversation, and there's lots of people, consumers are in the comments saying, I want to know what things cost, and the contractors in the comments are like, it's none of your business. And so there's this argument happening in the comments. Yeah. I'm a huge proponent that it's a very detailed scope, right? You should have a very detailed scope and a lump sum price, one single price. Yeah. So if it's bathroom remodel, we're doing this, and this price is $25,000, right? If you break it out, you're giving it seems like transparency, but what you're doing is it's like giving ammunition to somebody who doesn't know how to shoot a gun. And so like they're going to be doing all kinds of things with it, because they feel like they know what's going on. But you and I both know that contractors can hide numbers anywhere. You know what I mean? I can do the same estimate 15 different ways with 15 different prices, and you wouldn't know like where money's being hidden. And so it really just confuses more people than it helps. Yeah,
and they're thinking about all the wrong things. They're thinking about each piece of the puzzle, and then they might shop. We've got a store called Bunnings, and for building materials and so on, and for home handy people. So they might jump on the Bunnings website. You've got probably other ones there, and say, "Hey, well, you're charging me $30 extra for the piece," which is the wrong discussion to have. It's the final outcome that people are buying. So, and it's probably going to attract that wrong type of person as well, who wants all that stuff. As you spoke of at the start, the person who says they can do it themselves. Probably a bunch of headaches if you go down that path.
Oh yeah. Usually if someone's asking for a breakdown, they're not going to be a good client. There is one subsection where people are like, we want to hire you. It's just, it's $5,000 more than what we want to spend. And we're trying to figure out where we can save money. Like we want a breakdown so we can take things out. We want to hire you. But those people, you're like, oh, what are you hoping to see by a breakdown? Well, I want to see this and that. Oh, well, we can definitely work with you and we can take this out and take this out. And now I can just have another conversation with the client. And then we can save money to meet their budget, but I still don't have to give them a price breakdown.
Yeah, 100%. And what about working for another as a subcontractor for maybe you're doing one piece of the puzzle for a builder who's doing a whole entire project? Do you estimate differently for that type of scenario?
Yeah, that really is two different, types of things. I mean, typically if you're a true subcontractor, you have no marketing cost essentially, and so your overhead's lower, your prices are going to be a little bit less than if you're doing retail. And you're at your job is to make the general contractor's life easier in terms of what your section of that. So that turns into more of a quantity game than a quality, although you still got to do quality. But it's a different ball game than doing what I call retail. But it can still be lump sum, or you could break it out. It's not really going to make much of a difference in subcontracting.
Yeah. All the guys that I know in that space, they try to move away from it fairly quickly, and particularly if they're working here in Australia with the large volume builders who really screw them down to the lowest possible price, and then they're rushed to do jobs, and the quality falls away and all that stuff. With some of the volume builders, not all of them, but there's that potential for that to occur. So. People trying to move away to have direct customers is obviously a great goal to have if you're kind of stuck in the middle at the moment. To get more of that end customer is a great thing to do.
There's a specific strategy if you're a subcontractor, is that if I'm trying to get a new GC, I'm gonna approach them like, look, here's what I'm gonna do. The next 3 jobs you give me, I'm actually going to discount my price. I'm going to do it for less. But after the 3rd job, then I'm going to be charging you more, my normal rate. My goal in the next 3 jobs is to impress you, with scheduling, with cleanliness, with quality. And so after 3 jobs, you're not going to want to hire anyone else. And so that's whenever the price can go up. And then if they balk at it, like, hey, we're not going to pay this new price. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day. And then now they have to start over and find another sub, or they have to hire a sub that's less quality. And, that other sub's not communicating as well. Because again, you're going to communicate really well. You're going to make the GC's life easier. And at that, they're going to be like, you know what? It's worth paying an extra $3,000 or $4,000 to have Brad come because he made my life easier. I didn't have to chase him down, figure out why he didn't show up. So there's a specific strategy you can implement as a subcontractor too.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it, Brad. There's just so many things that we could talk about today. Obviously, you're coaching so many businesses. You've probably seen it all before and can help people streamline finding out what those chinks in the armor are and ironing those things out. So is there anything we haven't covered that we probably should have before we kind of give you an opportunity to tell people how to connect and so on?
I think one thing that's important, and I know it's going to sound like a shameless plug, but you need to find a mentor. You need to find a coach. You need to find someone that you can plug into, because a lot of contractors that I talk to that don't end up, getting coaching, I follow up with them a year later and they're in their exact same place, or worse, they're out of business. And it's really because they didn't make that one decision of getting help. It's getting help does not mean you failed. It doesn't mean that you're a loser or that you're weak or that it's just like, that's how you accelerate the growth, is by getting help. Everybody has coaches. Michael Jordan had coaches,
Yeah.
all the greats in the world have had mentors and coaches. So don't live on an island. Don't think I can figure it out. Go get help somewhere in some capacity. I don't care what it is. It doesn't have to be me, but go get help and don't try to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the other thing too, if you can find a coach in the exact field, so niched, we spoke about niching as a business, but the people you bring into your world that are going to support you in coaching and so on, if they've got experience, if they've got runs on the board in that exact thing, they're going to be far superior to a generalist. I think there's the generalist coaches, whilst they might help you draw out some information out of your own mind, it's great where you can get insights from from perspectives that, runs on the board, I think are really important. Is runs on the board, is that just an Aussie expression? Have you heard that before?
I've never heard it before, so it has to be.
I think it's a cricket. You probably don't watch cricket over there. I think it's a cricket expression. No. So there you go. So yeah, getting the work done, and people who've done it before are going to help you a whole lot more than having generalists who might help you to a degree, but I think get the very best when you're getting coaching done. So, and that's what you do, Brad. So thanks so much. How do people connect with you, find out more?
Yeah, so we mentioned earlier, I do have a podcast. It's on the screen. I don't know if you can see it if you're watching this, but the Hammer and Grind podcast is the name of the podcast. You can go search that out. I think I'm on episode 252 right now. So there's plenty of content to learn about. Also, I wrote a book about what we talked about called The Contractor Profit Blueprint, and I want to give everyone a free ebook version who's listening to this. We can come up with a coupon code. You tell me, like maybe BUILT, if we just go with coupon code BUILT, BUILT, would that work, Wes?
Yeah, for sure. And we can put everything in the show notes as well, obviously, so people can find.
Yeah, if you go to the it's the website is the same name as the book, thecontractorprofitblueprint.com. We'll have links in the show notes, but if you go there, when you go check out the ebook, $7, but if you put the promo code BUILT in there, when you check out, it's free. You can have the book for free in the e version. So yeah, I'd love to do that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that's very generous of you, Brad. And I encourage everyone to jump on and get that free resource. Thanks so much, Brad. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Absolutely, Wes. Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.